One of the first things I recommend if you're getting set up to do iOS development is to take a few minutes and set up your Ruby environment. Now, OS X comes with a version of Ruby already installed, but I still recommend that you install a tool called rbenv, and I refer to it as rbenv. I don't know how you actually pronounce that, but we'll take a look at that here in a second. rbenv allows you to install and manage multiple versions of Ruby, and I think you may find that you're doing that regardless. If you only ever use one version of Ruby, it's still a useful tool in my opinion. If you already have your Ruby environment set up and configured and you're more than happy with it, you can obviously skip this movie and move on to the next one. However, if you haven't, I suggest you follow my recommendation to use rbenv and get that set up, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm going to do a quick search here for rbenv, and this is a tool that's hosted on GitHub. So I'm not going to actually lead you through the step-by-step instructions for installing rbenv. There's a couple of ways to install it, and they outline this on the site here on their GitHub README file. The two basic ways is either to check out the tool from GitHub or instead use Brew. And this is what I'm going to actually recommend, is that you use Brew to install rbenv, and once you get that installed and set up properly, then I will help get you set up with a proper Ruby version and a Ruby gem, and all of this is in preparation for being able to install and use CocoaPods. And if you've never heard of CocoaPods, it's a tool for iOS development that allows you to easily reference other libraries and incorporate them into your projects. And that's what I use very frequently for my development. At this point, hopefully you have rbenv installed, and you can check that from the command line if you'll open up your terminal by typing rbenv, and you should get some help. What I'm going to help you do now is to install, first of all, determine what Ruby versions are on your system. And if you haven't done anything, you'll be able to type rbenv version, and the only Ruby version currently available is the one that's installed with OS X, which is called the system version. What I'm going to do is help you to download the latest version of Ruby and then make that our current version, and then we'll do a little bit more setup and install some Ruby gems. So the first thing we want to do is take a look at what Ruby versions we can install. So you'll type rbenv install -l, which stands for to list the possible Ruby versions. This will give you a pretty gigantic list. There's all sorts of, I don't know what all these are. I'm not a Ruby expert, but if you'll scroll back and look at the plain versions, you'll notice the latest one at the time of this recording is 2.2.0. So that's the one I'm going to choose. You can choose whichever you'd like. I would recommend the latest standard version, 2.2.0 in this case. So back to the command line, and we're going to use rbenv to install, and I just list the version. Once I hit enter, I've already done this, so I'm not going to repeat this, but this will take a few minutes depending on the speed of your internet connection, and it will set up, it will download and install version 2.2.0 of Ruby. And once that's done, you can pause the movie, and once that's complete, then what I want you to do is to set up that version as your current version. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this, and you can read about it on the rbenv site. But what I prefer to do is go to my home directory, which is NimbleNoggin in this case, and set the specific version of the Ruby environment that I want to be the version that I use when I'm at or below this directory. All of my development projects are contained in a folder beneath my home folder, and so by setting the version of Ruby at this level, it will apply to all subfolders. So we can see which versions are available, and you'll notice that I've got the system version, which is the current version denoted by the asterisk, and also 2.2.0 is available. I can issue an rbenv command which says local, and that will set the current version of Ruby for this directory or anything beneath it to the version that I specify, 2.2.0 in this case. And it didn't look like it did anything, but now when I say rbenv version, it will tell me 2.2.0 is the current version, and it's set by the command that I issued previously. If I type versions, then you'll notice I now have an asterisk next to the 2.2.0 version. So at this point, I've downloaded, installed, and set version 2.2.0 of Ruby as my default version of Ruby anytime I'm using Ruby or referencing Ruby at or beneath my home folder in OS X. The final step in setting up your Ruby environment with rbenv is to install a Ruby gem called Bundler. I'll get into in another movie how we use Bundler, but let's just make sure at this point that we have Bundler installed and available to the system. So open your terminal to your home folder in OS X and type the command gem install bundler. I've already done this, but this is all you have to do. Just run this. As soon as it completes, then you'll use you'll make sure the rbenv environment can see that gem. Anytime you install a new gem, it's always a good idea to type the rbenv command rehash, and that just makes sure that all of the gems that you've installed are available to the Ruby environment. So that's it. We have our Ruby environment set up, and we'll use it in another movie.